So our first one this morning is our UC San Diego. UC San Diego sees students' math skills plummet. Uh, for the record, UC San Diego was one of two universities I applied to when I was a senior in high school. It was my safety school. I got into both schools I applied to because it was not cheap to apply to schools. The fee that they charge per school, I mean, I understand why they need to do it, but I wasn't applying to a dozen schools willy-nilly, didn't have the money. So I applied to UCSD and Cal Poly SLO. Got into both of them, chose Cal Poly SLO because it was far enough away that my parents weren't likely to pop in my dorm room, and it was the better engineering school. I think it's still the better engineering school. But UCSD, also very good engineering program. There was a difference between UCSD and Cal Poly, and the one difference was, though I was accepted into UCSD, and I mentioned this on Twitter last week when this story first popped up. I think I used the word probationary. That, I'm almost positive, wasn't the word that they used, because that smells of academic probation, which is, you're in trouble. I think it was provisional. I was provisionally accepted to the electrical engineering program until I could prove that I could pass a math class. That was their concern. I got a letter shortly thereafter saying I was no longer provisional because I'd passed the Advanced Placement Calculus AB exam, which is, the first semester of college calculus, basically. That got me through 1/4 of college calculus up at Cal Poly. Cal Poly was on the quarter system. But so I say that because I kind of know math. This scares the bejesus out of me. And you wonder, what the heck happened? The number of first-year students in remedial math courses at the university surged to 390 in fall 2022, up from 32 in fall 2020. The remedial math course was designed in 2016 and only addressed missing high school math knowledge. But instructors quickly realized that many of their students had knowledge gaps that went back to middle or elementary school. Wow. I've got quite a bit of experience with this because after my journalism career, I went and worked for a small startup math textbook company. And a big part of the company's business, most of their focus was on community colleges. We did have we did have plenty of four-year universities who adopted our books as well. But the main target was community colleges. And a good portion of our textbooks that we sold to community colleges were remedial textbooks. This was stuff students should have learned in, frankly, elementary school. The lowest level introductory math book that we produced, and we were competing in this space. So other companies, the big ones were Cengage and Pearson, had books like this too, because we competed against each other with these. But I think the first chapter of the introductory math book was like place names and value, and numbers or values or something like that. Telling 100 versus 1,000 versus a tenth versus 100th. And those are community colleges. That should be acceptable to community colleges. You get into UCSD, you get into a UC school, and with some notable exceptions, namely Cal Poly, generally UC schools are seen as a higher tier than the California State University schools. Cal Poly SLO is probably the lone CSU school that's above those. San Diego State's business school is probably better than most UC schools, business schools, but to get into a four-year university and have knowledge gaps that should have been covered in elementary school, Uh, that's bad. And honestly, the politicians have not made this any better because a few years ago, at least in California, they banned community colleges from requiring what are basically no credit remedial math courses, even though the students need it. Now, community colleges have gotten kind of clever with getting around that because you still got to educate the students, and they don't know the math. So they'll have a math course that's high enough, maybe it's pre-calculus or something that's credit, and they'll at the same time run students through a math lab or a math tutoring system that reinforces or sometimes for the first time teaches them the elementary and middle school and even high school math that they should have learned but didn't. The downside for the company I used to work for is that killed a lot of their business because you can't require students to buy a textbook for a course that, on a subject and a course that they're not getting any credit for. You can have them buy that, pre-calc book, but if they need an algebra book to help them pass the pre-calc course, you can't require the algebra book. And that was a serious challenge for this company. And it's a serious challenge for the kids. And, we can't hurt their feelings. Well, we need to educate them. But, politicians don't really care. And I'm not saying that the old way was necessarily the best way, but you can't pretend like the problem doesn't exist when it obviously does. Now, obviously, that only applied to community colleges, which means you get students who skip community colleges, go to a four-year university, and they're paying serious money to take a remedial course. Why? Because they need it. They shouldn't have gotten into the four-year school in the first place. And this is, where we run into another problem. So in 2024, the average high school math GPA for students in Math 2, the middle school level remedial math course, was 3.65, an A-. The kids were getting B's and A's, and they couldn't do the math. The elimination of standardized testing together with COVID resulted in a mismatch between students' course levels / grades and their actual levels of preparation. You think Harvard's the only place with grade inflation. There's a whole bunch of high schools with it as well. And, that's pressure from the politicians and whatnot to, let's, pass them along. You can't really hold kids back nowadays. I think you can hold them back once in elementary school, maybe. But, it's, I failed the class. I'm still going to be a junior next year, or, whatever it is. But a lot of the high schools, a lot of the classes are playing into this as well. We'll give you an A, and then you take a standardized test, and it's obvious that you should have failed. Here's some of their solutions to it. Again, they're going to try and initial target of no more than 300 first-year students in these courses by 2026, 2027. Good luck. I think that starts with your admissions department. Here's establish feedback methods with high schools, especially those with persistent mismatches between student grades and placement results. Hey, high schools, they're compiling a list. It's a nice and naughty list. It's who can we trust are telling us the truth about the students they're producing. That's what it is. It's growth in number of students with insufficient math preparation. Fall 2020, it was 32. That was Math 2. That's the middle school. By fall 2025, 8.5%. Math 3B, that's high. That's got to be high school. So, and no placement but needs math. You've got nearly 50. You've got nearly 15%. That's 5.5. 14% with insufficient math preparation, who frankly should be at a community college. or you don't require math for whatever their major is. I don't know, but this is bad. They gave out some examples of the questions. The percentage in red, the parentheses to the right, are the grade level that the student should have learned this, and the percentage is how many of the students taking this test. And they frame this not as a "you're an idiot" test. They frame this as your instructors need this in order to customize the curriculum for students like you, blah, 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 blah. And they gave them donuts afterwards when they completed the test. I think they had 30 questions, 45 minutes. It should take 5-6 minutes. I mean, really, it would have taken me 5 minutes. Yeah. I've substituted high school freshman algebra classes before, and I've told some students, hey, you've been doing algebra since first grade. I said, no, we haven't. And I show them a problem like the first one. So it's usually even simpler than the first one. It's usually 7 plus blank equals 9. I'm like, put in a blank box or just do an underline. I say, ooh, now look what the underlines become or the boxes become. I put in the letter X. Voila! Algebra! 7 plus 2 equals blank plus 6. 1 out of 4 students got that wrong. Wrong. What the? Sarah had 9 pennies and 9 dimes. How many coins did she have? 1 in 5 couldn't add 9 plus 9. All but 1 or 2 were able to subtract 13 minus 8. Now, warning here, they were not allowed to have calculators. So they had to do this math the old-fashioned way. Yay. I can't tell you the number of times I've substitute taught in even honors, algebra or algebra 2 classes or whatnot. And I mentioned I passed the calculus AB exam. I will be very bluntly honest with you. I was getting like a C plus B minus in the high school class for the AP class for calculus. I got a 5, which is the highest score you can get on the calculus AB exam. I was at the bottom of the, near the bottom of the class learning the calculus. It was challenging for me. For the record, everyone in my high school calculus class got a 5. There was only one class. There was 20 some of us. Everyone got a 5. Credit to Miss Nodding's teacher. Great job. So when I substitute teach from time to time in a high school math class, I can usually do or explain the math up until calculus. I've forgotten too much calculus to be able to teach a high school calculus class, except for like the first week or 2 of the school, which I actually did this year. The power rule I was able to explain to the kids. Look, hey, makes it easier. They get down to here like this: if A equals -2 and B equals -3, evaluate AB squared minus AB. That's not a tough question. 2% of these students got it right. 142%. It's not many. That is scary. And I suspect that UCSD is not alone. I suspect, this report was made public. It's what UCSD is encountering. I suspect you got the same thing at UC Santa Barbara, the same thing at UC Berkeley, the same thing at UCLA. Wouldn't surprise me in the least. It's what happens when you stop requiring standardized testing. And here again this story is from June of last year. This is Voice of San Diego. It's an independent, nonprofit newsroom in San Diego. They do a lot of good work. Really appreciate them, based on how much the Union Tribune shrunk and all that sort of stuff. But San Diego Unified high schoolers getting great grades but troubling test scores. An analysis of thousands of letter grades from San Diego Unified high schoolers shows that far more students pass classes in subjects like English, math, and science than meet state standards on tests. They give some examples. School of Creative and Performing Arts, a magnet school. 96% of juniors pass science classes. Scroll down here to the third paragraph. That same school, 16% met those state science standards. So 96% passed, only 16% actually passed the test. At Lincoln, only 23% made state English standards. At Madison, 13% met math standards. Gaps of 80, 63, and 72 points respectively. It's Monday. I'm working on it. Big words. So this is one of the graphs they came up with, and it shows the disparity. This is math standards. There's one for English, there's one for science. You take a look at Lincoln High School down there. That's the one that has single digits passing the math, yet 74, 75% got passing grades. And if you take and again, these links will be in the show notes. I encourage you to check them all out, including one to there's a link directly to the UCSD report. So you can read that entire report. Some of it's a little dry, some of it's a little in the weeds. I think I hit the highlights, but if you're interested, I encourage you to check it out. But you'll notice that there are some that have less of a gap, and there are some where that gap, it's less of a gap, and they're shifted farther to the right. Frankly, the difference in these schools is their demographics. You look at these schools and it's like, okay, yeah, that's in a poor neighborhood, largely black. This is in a relatively wealthy neighborhood, probably lots of whites and Asians. Scripps Ranch at the second from the bottom, wealthier area. Lincoln High School, that is down in the southeastern part of San Diego. Hoover High School, that is really close to, it's eastern San Diego. Again, relatively poor neighborhood, large minority population. So you can tell a little bit from the school what its demographics are. One thing that may be at play is changes in how educators grade students' performance. San Diego Unified is part of a wave of districts that have ushered in standard-based grading. It places less emphasis on due dates and more on whether kids become proficient, often allowing students to make up assignments or retake tests. Here's the problem, and this especially impacts math. With math, if you learn the concepts, if you are not doing math problems like almost immediately to reinforce that, it's gone. I know when I was working for the math textbook company, there were lots of professors that we worked with who I'm not sure what the term was they used, but they basically reversed the homework system. Used to be in class, it's like, okay, let's go over, we'll go over the examples in the book, blah, 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 and your homework is to do such and such problems. A lot of professors, especially at the community college level, would flip that around. Your homework is to read the section and go over examples 1 through 4 or whatever, and we will do the homework problems in class so you can ask questions. So you can extend your abilities. So you can combine 2 different examples together. The parts of 2 different examples, or together to and apply them in a new, unique way. I think a lot of them found that worked best. But those were kind of college students who needed this, stuff to move on with their careers and pass. If you've got high school students where, and I've encountered this, where, oh, I'll just do it at home. They aren't doing it at home. They're using AI to solve the problem. Sometimes AI gets it right, sometimes AI gets it wrong. And you can tell when a student's asked AI because you look at that, it's like, yeah, that's something AI would do. But even if you're allowing them, oh, well, yeah, you don't have to turn this in tomorrow, you can turn it in, a month from now. Odds are that what you're getting turned in is some other student's work or AI, or Wolfram Alpha if it's math. Grades are one way that teachers establish expectation. If grading becomes very easy because of corrections, then that is effectively lowering expectations for kids. Well, yeah, because you got too many administrators who care more about passing the kids. And politicians, what's your graduation rate? And for kids who may not go any farther than high school, maybe that's okay if they're going to go into a trade or something. But, they still better know how to measure. So you're going to need fractions. Do basic math so you're not overloading a circuit or something. Yeah. There's nothing like walking across that graduation stage and making your family proud, and then going to college and thinking that an A or B grade was real and having to take remedial classes at the college level. It breaks a person. It breaks a person at that young age to realize they have not been intentionally, authentically taught. Yeah, I believe there are some students like this. Oh yeah, I got an A. I worked, I just turned it in. Maybe they think that's the way to get through life. In my own educational experience, and again, this was, to get into college here in California, you had to take 2 years of a foreign language. I lived in San Diego. I took Spanish. You had the high school I was at, you had two options. You had German or Spanish. German teacher, I knew, my family knew the teacher that taught German at the high school. Nice guy, but it's German. Not particularly useful except during Oktoberfest, and then not even then. Spanish, useful. So I took 2 years of Spanish. I go to college. The journalism program requires you to take 1 year of a foreign language. Again, like Spanish. It's California. I can use Spanish. Spanish will be useful. So I took 1 year of Spanish. I asked people, and I mention this to kids sometimes too, how much do you think 2 years of high school Spanish, how quickly was that covered in college? And I thought that would get me through the first quarter. I thought 2 years of high school Spanish would get me through the first 10 weeks of college, because I knew college was, it was more difficult, it was more challenging, it required more of you. But I thought 2 years would get me a quarter. 2 years did not get me a quarter. It did not get me 2 quarters. It did not get me the entire year. It got me 6 weeks. They covered everything I had done in 2 years of high school Spanish in 6 weeks. Summer break, I made a run down to the high school because they were kind of still in session when I got out, and I confronted my Spanish teachers. It's supposed to be a college prep class. I realize you teach to the lowest, denominator, unfortunately. But 2 years with you guys got me through 6 weeks. So I understand where these kids are coming from. We need to do better. Do I have solutions? Maybe I got solutions, maybe I don't know. I've got ideas. I got things that should be tried. I think this whole every kid needs to go to college thing is a joke. I think making high schools do that for decades, including while I was in high school. It was okay for me. But I think there's tons of kids that were ill-served by that belief. Um, Trade schools are great. Uh, if I could do something like that, I'd probably be gainfully employed, even here in California. Instead, I'm talking to you. Thanks for watching this clip from the Hoystory On Air broadcast. I encourage you to follow me on Substack, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. I want to thank you for your support, and please feel free to watch another video or two or three.